hate goblins so much that I have magic.
I learned magic so that I could literally disintegrate them. Well, that was a hard impact.
Yeah, I was not ready for that.
Well, oh, you didn't look like it.
Yeah.
Didn't look like it. Yeah.
So,
I mean, you should be pretty experienced at this now. This is like...
well, it's been... it's the sixth time I've been
sixth
doing
time? Yeah.
this? Of course. You
Yeah. Lucky number 6, I think they say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not as good as lucky number 7, but
No.
still pretty good.
I hope so. I hope so.
All right, let's get this.
Yeah.
All right, attention. Read out loud exactly what is written on this note, or be destroyed and replaced. Welcome to Caffeine and Cantrips, the show where we talk about D&D or else. Hello, I'm Sean number 49, and
I'm Byron 113.
not bad streak. This week, these two slanderous flat-mouthed infections will be talking about one of the eternal Dungeons and Dragons questions: how to make your characters matter.
You're an infection. Hey, welcome back. So yes, we are Caffeine and Cantrips. Thanks for being here with us. Today, as it said, we're going to be covering memorable characters.
Right, how to make your characters matter.
How to make them, yes.
Memorable, yeah, okay.
Yeah. And so, how to really dig your claws into them and create something that's lasting. And I think they didn't say, but I think they wanted memorable good, not memorable bad.
Bad.
I
would never want to play with that character ever again. It's so
Right.
bad. Yes.
Right. So
Yes.
I think this is kind of the idea of what we want to poke at,
Mhm,
right? And look at positive. We want to build positive experiences, positive interactions. Now,
Okay.
I mean, there can be great examples of twists and whatnot, but I think we're going to stay away from like the end. Yeah, twist the knife, M. Night Shyamalan style. I think we're going to stay away from the end of a character concept, right? Let's go to the beginning.
Okay.
And we'll start from there. We'll build from the ground up.
Yep. I
Build
like
from the
that.
ground up. So, to get started, one of the great things that we got to do is to like what's about to happen, which is to jump on that like button.
Yeah.
Like, subscribe, join us in the land of constant teleportations, being a mild interruption to one's day, but
Mild.
a good one because we get to hang out with you and like to do that.
Yeah. So yeah, smash, push, lie on, step on, stomp on.
Caress.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm.
That like and subscribe or follow button, depending on how you're consuming this.
Yes, please do. And now we'll just like dig right into it because that's what we're here for.
All right.
So I think to start off with something memorable, I think we have to begin with something memorable, or at least something that's going to captivate or compel you.
Okay.
So, I mean, in my creative process, generally when I start with a character, I start with a point of inspiration or multiple points of inspiration that I want to bundle into my own retelling of something.
All right.
Right? Like we said before, most stories have already been uncovered and most stories have a place and a time that they've existed before.
Mhm.
But now we want to go in and do something new, right? Now we want to go in and tell our own story and our own stories over this campaign.
Right. Or tell that same story in our way.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And so when we're looking for inspiration, a lot of times we can get inspiration from consuming other media sources, right?
Okay.
Comic books, movies, games, actual books and stories that we read about.
It could be someone that you actually know.
Can absolutely be someone that you know and what they've maybe done for you in your life, or maybe what they've done in history.
You should see my Byron character. He's pretty awesome.
Oh, but that matches. So yeah, no, I think that's okay. But yeah, no, that's a great point. Because we can ultimately begin writing only what we know.
Yep.
Right? And as we go and we explore, we discover more and we can fold that into us.
Mhm.
But a great way of looking at the world and looking at characters in that world is, my father or my stepfather or the positive male role model in my life, a mentor, right? I like the way that he critiques. I like the way that he adopts that mentorship role, right? And I want to create a character that becomes like the wizened old fighter or the veteran fighter who knows a lot and who wants to get these whippersnappers. He cares about them. He wants to keep them safe, but he knows that ultimately they have to go into danger. So how do I adopt those things? But that's a great place to start, right? I want to create a mentorship character.
Right, like you don't want to directly translate everything about that character into, right? You just want to take those important parts, like what you find compelling about that character, and use that as the nugget of inspiration to go off, right?
And that can be one point. And then when you start developing another point and another point or another aspect, eventually you just start to Frankenstein your own monster.
I'll like pull from like multiple characters, like a little bit of Batman, a little bit of Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I don't know. Maybe that's not his name.
Well, that was the movie, yeah. But you could pull from Batman and then maybe Jessica Rabbit.
Oh yeah,
right.
Yeah. I was like, that's ridiculous, but it could be interesting.
It could be interesting, yeah. Right. And then you pull
a little bit of Joe Biden,
yeah,
right? A little bit of Trump,
yeah.
I didn't mash it all together into something hopefully interesting. I mean, at this point, we don't know if it's going to be interesting or not, but at least it's a launch point.
Well, and I think one of the major things that we have to understand is that we have to be interested in it, right?
Right.
And this is why it's our points of inspiration that we're putting into it to start creating something that we're going to want to be a part of for whatever the length of the campaign is, decided kind of in your session zeros, right? Is this going to be a one-off, 5 episodes, 10 episodes, 10 years of life that you're going to go through this campaign? What's it going to be? And with that, I think a really huge consideration has to come in. Like some idiosyncrasies and some character traits can become overdone, right? If you're Wile E. Coyote and you're constantly running into painted murals, right?
Yeah.
Eventually the rest of the party is just gonna be like, oh, okay, that's just what they do. That's
right. And some, I think, character traits can be maybe untenable. Like when I played that goblin character and I decided to talk like this, I was worried that I wasn't able to keep talking like that for an extended period of time. And sure enough, it was hard. Like 6 hours, my voice was.
Yeah, there were some sessions that I could tell that you had to opt out of some role playing opportunities because you physically couldn't keep up with the demands of the character. And that's super interesting, but that's something that you want to decide, right?
Yeah.
Is this voice, and I'll talk about voices and stuff later, but is this part of the character something that I can do for the long run? Right? Is this something that, I'm ultimately always going to make this character clumsy and they're always going to like be clumsy? Well, that can be expressed in a lot of different ways, right? Oh, yes, they trip over their own shoelaces, or they fall upstairs, or they manage to hit the deck when they cross over carpet that's a little too high. Right. Okay. Well, that can translate later on into the campaign when they're holding the MacGuffin and they're like, oh my God, I hope they don't fumble it.
Right.
They don't fumble it. Like just put the gem in the spot, and they're like. Right, they got the shakes and everything, and you're just like, oh no!
I gotta get another hit. I got the shakes. God.
So I think that there's that kind of a character trait. Yeah. Right, could be expressed comfortably across the character's entire campaign and their entire story, versus if they always have to be loud and big and giant and like just. Like a firework all the time. That level of energy can become exhausting to the player, and that level of energy can become exhausting to the rest of the party because they have to deal with that. Right. So yeah, no, it's good.
That being said, though, I don't think that's enough of a reason, maybe not to try something, especially if you're not sure, because you can always change it later. If you're like, oh, that's too much, let's can dial it back a little bit. You can always mid-campaign figure out a reason to change.
Well, and you can decide that this is going to be a short-term thing that I want my character to grow out of.
Right.
Maybe this is an adolescent feature of mischief or mayhem that they exhibit, but ultimately I want that to disappear rather quick once they understand the seriousness of adventuring or the seriousness of the world that they're in, that they can't get away with that kind of grabastic comedy.
Right. I do like that idea of starting with being inspired by sort of characters that are already out in the media and other places that you see, because I find it's difficult when you have just a blank character sheet and you're just like, I can play anything. I don't know what to do, what's interesting, what's right. So being able to pull inspiration from somewhere else, not in its entirety, but sort of bits and pieces of different things that you find, different characters that you find interesting, is a great way to start. And
there's a great creator on YouTube called Tulok the Barbarian, who essentially goes out and he recreates characters in media as D&D builds. And when he's doing that, he breaks it out at the beginning of the build. He picks 3 aspects of the character that he wants to exemplify in the build, right? Because you could do anything. Oh, I'm picking Superman. Well, Superman you can't recreate in D&D, right? But you can recreate his courage, his determination, and maybe the fact that he's a brawler. He's a strong, punchy kind of guy. Right. Okay, great. I can take those 3 aspects and I can create a character off. I can take those 3 points of inspiration from him and create a character. But circling back to what you said and going from what in people, you can see a realistic approach to how these attributes interact with other people in the world. Right. How a courageous person or how a courageous speaker, right, a positive mentor can actually affect the people around them. And you can look at how they do that. Right. The mannerisms that they use, the kind of verbal cues, visual cues, and whatnot, to then take those inspirations and start to add a 3-dimensionality to them. Right. It's not just a line on a piece of paper. Yeah. Right. It's an actual attribute. Right. Well, it has sort of deeper effects on the character besides just, oh, that's what they do, right? Like, oh, he talks with a lisp and he has a limp. But by rolling that further into your character as a starting point, it makes the character a little more interesting. Like, well, how are they going to be because of those aspects that you've chosen? I like that. But yeah, if you just stay at that top level, I think you're missing out on a lot of what your character can be. Well, we've just started, right? Yeah. This is the starting point. First inspirational points, right? And if you're correct when you say if you just take these kind of inspirations and you go, okay, Superman, he's strong. All right, I'm going to put my top stat strength. Yeah. Right. He doesn't really dodge attacks, so I'm just going to dump dex. He's kind of intelligent, so intelligence is somewhere in the wisdom. I don't really care about them because all I wanted was that top stat in strength. Okay, well, now we're going to miss out on a lot of things that make Superman a great, memorable character. Right. If we just jump to the end and call this, print it, right? We're done. Right. And one of the things that, I don't know, maybe if you want to talk about this next, goes into once we kind of have that inspiration, how do we start making it more 3-dimensional? How do we start empowering it? Yes. I mean, there's an aspect of, I guess, the mechanics. Like by making Superman, I'll make him a monk because he's a brawler, right? But I'll give him like some cantrip to shoot out of his eyes. But I don't think that is what really gives your character depth. Less of what they do, more why they do it. So and sort of in what they do, in what direction are they doing it, for what reason, right? So I like to think of it as, for me, the first step for me when I create a character is I think about the direction that I want the character to go in life and as an entity within the campaign. So I do this by thinking about what is the character's goal, what's their motivation, and what is their intention. Those sort of 3 aspects. So a goal would be what the character wants to do or achieve in the campaign, or it's just in general. The motivation is why the character wants to do that,
And then the intention is how they're going to go about doing that. So, for example, the goal of this character is to kill all goblins,
Okay.
right? Their motivation is because goblins killed their whole family and the whole town, and now they hate goblins so much. I think they're the worst thing in the world, and everything, all of them need to be killed in order to have a safer world, right? And then the intention is how they're going to go about doing that. Like, what's their plan,
Okay.
right? And that is to, right, get some equipment and just go out and kill goblins and raid goblins and hunt goblins, and that's all they do. That's all they care about, right? And right there in those 3 steps you've described, Goblin Slayer, that anime. That's his whole character, right? And you can have an entire series based just on with those 3 aspects. And with that, you understand at the very core of the character what they want to do, why they want to do it, and how they want to go about doing that. And that'll inform your role play. In every situation, you know that these are the 3 tenets of this character. And that'll really, I find, guide you on what is the appropriate thing that this character is going to do or how they're going to react. Because it all goes back to them, right? And these are only the main 3. You can have sort of sub-goals, sub-motivation, sub-intentions.
Interesting.
As well in that.
So do you suggest that obviously you start with one goal, right? But would you create multiple goals possibly and then create a motivation and an intention for each? Or are we talking about core aspects of the PC so they should just kind of have one core goal, one core motivation, and one core intention on how they act those out?
I think so. I mean, you can have multiple cores, I guess, but at least for me, I would find that I'm not at the level where I can keep all that, I think, in my mind and balanced without some sort of hierarchy of priorities in my mind. So I would have set a main set of goal, motivations, intentions, and then have like sort of sub ones, right? So if I can't do this, or if it's not appropriate, then I think about these things or that thing, right?
So your core ideal is ultimately your core goal is ultimately going to span the entire campaign, or is this something that you think that you should be able to complete within the campaign, or maybe you don't complete it at all?
Well, this is really just for building the character. Where the character goes from there is, well, that depends on what happens in the campaign.
Oh, okay. So this is like an additional level to informing their backstory.
Pretty much. Like, it's just we're setting what the character, like creating that character for session 1. Like, I'm gonna step in and this is my character. Where they go from here, I don't know, but I know that this is where they're starting and where they're intending to go. And are they going to take left turns, right turns, or go straight towards that goal? That'll depend on the DM too, and the other players, right? If we have the water slide, right, that's the direction of his flow, is these 3 goal, motivation, and intention. Right? And the DM, if he's doing his job, will put things in this character's way so they can't just go and straight snap their fingers and all the goblins are dead, right? There's, this is a goblin, and they are the mayor of a town for humans, for everyone. They're all living peacefully, and by all intentions and by all sort of metrics, they're like a lawful good, and they're good for the world.
Yes.
Well, what's Goblin Slayer going to do then? Are they going to?
Yeah. Do they stay true to themselves, or do they have to adapt?
Yeah. Right. So where they go from there, you can't really know. And I think while you can think about possibilities at character creation, I think you should be ready to not go there, because I think that's part of the fun of it, is setting up this character. They've got a direction, and then finding out where they actually end up. Right. And it's funny. Some people might say, well, we have character building stuff like that. We have, what is it? The bonds, ideals,
Flaws.
Flaws. Is that it?
I think there's one more, but that's the core of it.
Wow, we're experts.
Yes.
And I think that's good, but it doesn't answer these three questions. And I think these three questions in some ways is, no, I do. I think these three, the goal, motivation, intention, is more important to answer than those bonds, ideals, and flaws.
No, they should inform each other though, right? Like obviously your ideal, if your character has an ideal, in this case, a world without goblins, right? My goal to support that ideal, right, is to remove goblins from the world.
Yes.
Right. And so they should kind of have an interaction with each other. These should not just be, well, my goal is over here, but my idealistic world is over there, and then my bonds are up here, and my flaws.
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
Like they should have a network between them. How it creates a believable set of circumstances.
No, and I would start with setting your goal, motivation, intention
before.
And then the other three sort of really logically follow. Once you get those three, you're like, oh, I know what at the core what this character is and who they are. And now I know, obviously, yes, this would be their ideal, right? This would be their bonds. And this would be their flaws, right? Because the flaws, I guess, kind of goes into my next point. After you're setting your goals, motivations, and intentions, I would go and then place sort of character concepts, sort of character traits that are problems that hinder their direction.
Okay. So before we get into that, because flaws sounds like it's its own thing.
Okay.
Right. Okay. So we understand, there's lots of things out there that we can understand on how to make a goal, right?
Okay.
Like in real life, in the game, how to make goals, how to interact that with your background, how to interact that with your character's story and whatnot. I think types of motivations we should just spend a moment on talking as well.
Okay,
right?
cool.
Because generally there's three major types of motivation. There's intellectual motivation, like I want to know more. Okay. Right. There's monetary or like financial motivation, where you want to have more, or you want to maybe it's not greed necessarily, but it's like a physical representation of motivation where you want to have the power to defeat, or you want to have the power to secure or save or overcome. And then the third one is like an emotional motivation, right? So taking our not trademark Goblin Slayer character type, right? Like to inform his goal, right? And this is how this becomes three different characters, right? To take his goal of to remove all goblins from the world, right? Is this, Goblin Slayer-ish, he's doing it because he knows that the world will be better, right? And so that's what he's trying to fulfill. He's trying to fulfill the idealized world that he sees. Right. Or is he doing it B, from like a greed or like a security? People, and we saw this in other media like Tony Stark, right? I want to put a suit of armor around the world. Right. Like I want to make the world safe because the safe world is the only world that I can relax in. Right. So that's my character motivation. I want to create peace. Right. And then the third, emotional. No, I want revenge. And my only truest, most justified revenge will be removing all of them. Right. There's three different information packets there to inform your goal. Right. Because intellectually, you can be cold. You can be dispassionate, right? You just cut them down. Why? Because if I don't cut them down, they'll spring up. And the party can look at your character and be like, why don't you feel anything? Well, because they didn't feel anything when they did this to me. So that character can then go and really emulate what he saw in the goblins at that moment. They just didn't care. They were just doing it for survival. They just killed. So now I'm just going to kill. I'm going to emulate that aspect, right? And so each of these motivations really changes how the character's intention, how they're going to respond and act to these goals is going to be, right? Before we start talking about flaws and the barriers that put us between it, right? What is the style of motivation? It might be easier to pick the broad strokes, right? Intellectual, physical, or emotional, to inform your character going forward and see which one you like, which one fits more with what you want to do. Right. And then your intentions need to inform that particular desire
Yeah.
I need to satisfy an emotional component.
Right.
So when I go after goblins, I don't just kill them, I butcher them.
Right.
I don't bury them in graves. I don't let the cleric give them last rites.
Right.
Right? Like this is something so near and dear to my heart that they must suffer. Right? And then you exemplify that. And maybe
Sounds like a paladin.
sounds like it could be a paladin, it could be a fighter, it could be a rogue, it could be a sorcerer, it could be anything. Right? It could be any
I
class.
hate goblins so much that I have magic.
I learned magic so that I could literally disintegrate them. Right? And you're like, whoa, disintegrate only targets one goblin, buddy.
That's-
You're like, I know. I got a lot of magic in to do. Right? And okay, so that's a great way of informing the character.
Yes.
And adding more depth to it,
Yeah.
right? Adding more believability that this is a core aspect of that character,
Mhm.
right? Because they're willing to go to these lengths, or they're willing to not go to these lengths, because I don't need the goblins to die brutally. I just need them to die. I'm intellectual about this, right?
Right.
A painless gas poured down their den is far more efficient and safe. I'm going to do it that way. I
Right.
don't have to get my hands dirty.
Or maybe, sure, I want to get rid of all the goblins in the world, but my intention, how I want to go about doing that, is I'm just going to polymorph them into rabbits.
Mm-hmm. True polymorph, so they can't come back in an hour.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Um,
Custom spell.
Custom spell, permanent polymorph.
Goblin.
Permanent polymorph goblin, level 3 spell.
Yeah.
Find it in your next book. I hope. Oh wow. But you know, this is important, I think.
Yeah.
Right. And then, not to hold you up, yes. Then this moves into the idea of flaws, and flaws is its own steak and potatoes.
Yeah, I think flaws is maybe too specific of a word.
Okay.
It means maybe, because when you say flaw, I figure it sounds like it's something wrong with you, or like a disadvantage or something, but it's not necessarily. I like to call them hindrances.
Okay.
It's something that hinders their intended direction,
Mm-hmm.
right? So for our hero there that wants to kill all the goblins, right? You can put lots of different kinds of hindrances. It could be like a personality or a character hindrance, like they just don't like killing,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it makes it more difficult for them to kill all the goblins, obviously.
Well,
Right.
this is a great, right. So, jumping into a previous example of Batman. Batman chooses
Yes.
to have the hindrance, right,
Yeah.
of his code, right, where he will not
Mhm.
kill, right, and
Yes.
most of his storylines revolve around him
Yeah.
not killing,
Yeah.
right, and that
Yeah. It could be a physical hindrance.
absolutely.
Like he has no hands. Maybe he's really weak,
Mm-hmm.
right? So he has to find creative ways of getting rid of the goblins.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it could be emotional hindrances. For example, his mother is half goblin, and she disapproves, and he doesn't want to disappoint his mother.
That's a twist.
Or another goal or motivation that's competing with that, like making his mother proud, but his mother doesn't want him to become a cold-hearted killer.
Right.
Right, so then they're pulled back and forth between their main direction and this other sort of hindrance, whatever hindering it. And why I like to set this up, and I think you don't have to have this in your character, but I think it adds a very major level of depth to them, because then there's this dynamic built into the character.
Mhm. There's an internal
They
struggle.
well, exactly.
Yeah.
They want to go one way, but they're being pulled in that direction, and it mirrors people in real life. We're all
Mhm.
like that.
Mhm.
We all have these competing sort of desires and goals and motivations pulling us in multiple directions that we have to navigate,
Mhm.
right? And I think that's what separates the characters that matter and the characters that don't, is the ones that we can relate to, right? If you build a character that is relatable to real people, so that you can see yourself in that character and doing those things and struggling with those things, then all of a sudden you just automatically care because you see yourself.
Yeah,
in
and
the
that's,
character.
that's the primary way that spectators or viewers pair themselves off is an emotional bond,
Mhm.
right? That's the easiest way to couple yourself to a character's thoughts, feelings,
Mhm.
struggles,
Mhm.
is feeling those things or feeling like you're in the same sort of conundrum or problem,
Yeah.
right? And the solution to that they come up with is often far easier and more simple than our real life solutions,
Right.
right? But ultimately, building that emotional bridge,
Yeah.
right,
It's
from the character
to the people who are watching,
to the
who are
spectators.
experiencing, as well as to yourself,
Okay.
right? If I can't relate to my own character in any way, I don't know. Personally, then I don't want to play the character as much. Then I don't do as well in that role because I don't understand the character. I don't see where he's going. I don't care about their goals. So when you do this, I think more importantly than the people who are experiencing your character from as a third party is you caring and having this character matter to you, because you're going to be playing this for, barring one shots, for an extended amount of time. And if you don't want to burn out, I think it's an important thing to set ahead of time, specifically at character creation, to give you that longevity.
Interesting. Yeah. So no, taking something that you love right in the inspiration phase, right, or really attracts you, putting it through this kind of sieve of creating emotions and goals and motivations and intentions, right, and then putting things that are competing within the character, right? Establishing either morality or a duality within them, that there's an internal demon or an internal dialogue that's going on, that's complicating and yet informing you in your role play, right, in your future role play. Fun still has to be a primary aspect of this entire process.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I don't think, even for a one shot, I don't think you want to be miserable playing a character.
Of course not.
No.
Of course not.
No. So, checking back in a kind of just a consistent effort of not necessarily reassurance, but just making sure that this is staying true to the guidelines that you've set. Right? Has this character gone too far in its goal? Maybe its core motivation isn't something that you really jive with. Right? You're getting bad vibes now. Right? Yeah, go back and tweak it. Right?
Yeah.
And especially I don't know what the rule is at your table, but at my table, I let characters change core aspects of themselves up to level 3. Right? I expect, and maybe this is something to bring up in your session zeros, but like, hey, I had this idea. I really wanted to go to this place with this character, and I realized that this place isn't a place that I actually really wanted to go to. I thought it was going to be cool. I've now entered type 3 fun. Right. And it's not good for me right now. I would like to change some stuff about this because I'm worried that I'm going to drag myself down. I'm going to drag everybody else down. Right. And ultimately, if I'm not having fun, why do I want to come? Why do I want to be here? Why do I want to?
Would it just be like a hard cutoff? Like, oh, he hated goblins, wants to kill them all, and now the next session, he's okay with goblins? Or would you work with the players to have a sort of a transition?
I would definitely want to keep the lines of communication open, but I do give them kind of veto pass to just say, even as far as like, hey, I love the character's personality. I saw them as a fighter.
Right.
I think they're more of a wizard. I don't know why I didn't see this before, but fighters aren't fun for me to play. Okay. I'm going to transfer everything over and I'm going to be a wizard now. Is that okay?
Wow. That's like mechanically fundamental.
Well, because the game is about fun. Right. And I think if somebody is enjoying, and this would be part of the conversation, but if somebody is enjoying aspects of their character and they want to keep those aspects, right, then yes, let's keep those aspects. Let's, do some retconning, mind bending kind of stuff. Right. And then let's make this game fun for you and continue on forward.
Rocks fall. You're a Harry now, wizard. You're a wizard now, Harry.
You're a Harry now, wizard. That's why we all have beards.
Rocks.
These kinds of twists aren't really twists because I think that ultimately they inform fun for everybody. Right. So up to level 3. After level 3, I think there's enough experience of playing your character, of RPing your character, of mechanically understanding your character, that now you've kind of consolidated your choices, right? You've chosen what you want it to be. I've given you the freedom to do that, the freedom to change. Oh, I took my first level bonus feat as a human to do, I don't know, to be chef. And then I understand that as I was playing, like, chef's kind of useless. Like, it doesn't really do what I wanted it to do. I want to make gourmet food, but anybody with like cooking skills can do that. So this doesn't do what I wanted it to do. Right. Can I take something else? Sure. Great. Let's talk about that.
No, I can see how that could be really useful.
But this, sorry, go ahead. Oh, okay. This ultimately up to that level 3 point at my table is the time when, like, almost session by session, you need to keep asking yourself, am I on my own rails? Right? Have I chosen the way to RP the character that I saw them being RP'd? Am I being true to their core motivations? Right? Whether those are secret or they're out in the open. Right. And like you said, oh, does he transition? Maybe he doesn't hate goblins as much. Yeah, maybe it comes out that he understands that as a kid, you know, he was told stories that it was goblins. He never saw what attacked the village, right? He was hid under the floorboards or under the bed, or he was, you know, hid in the well. He never saw what attacked the town, but then he finds out, oh, it wasn't goblins. Now all of a sudden the character's like, well, I hated goblins, but now I have no reason to hate goblins, and now I need to find myself. And okay, great. Hey, everybody, you know, in your session 0 or your session 0 plus ones or whatever, you're like, hey, my character is going to be a little bit lost right now as he finds a new motivation, as he finds a new goal. Just want to let you know he's going to be a little bit wishy-washy and a little bit lost in the RP. This is intentional. Let me know if it's going too far, if he's a little bit too whiny or whatever. But I need to redefine what's going on in my character.
No, I like that. Well, I think I like that more than just the hard cutoff. But if you have to do the hard cutoff,
now ultimately, fine, like I said, that was if you like aspects. If you don't like, I don't like playing a barbarian. I thought it was going to be cool. It's a rage. It's awesome. And then ultimately, I don't just want to hit things. I want to see like a barbarian. It's awesome. Beat the Lego movie where the protagonist is a barbarian. Everything is awesome. Smashing bricks together. You know, maybe it's you go, oh, okay. The way that I saw barbarians being fun.
Are you a barbarian? I'm a master builder. What are you talking about?
You know, maybe that's not fun. Maybe being a master builder is not fun. You want to go back to being whatever it is. If you want to abandon the character entirely, right? I think that, it should be out there that, here's your mulligan, right? We're early on in the campaign. The DM is establishing story and really building the foundations of the stories that he's got going on and all the individual plot lines that are happening. If you duck out by level 3 to replace, there's room for the DM to really kind of go, oh, okay, let's shift gears, right? Maybe I've been thinking about this for the past 6 months and developing it and whatnot, and then you're going to make me change gears. But, you know, being 100% done, which we're never really are as DMs, and being 80% done, it's not that big of a difference, right? Conceptually, I just need to bounce some stuff around, and now I got to include 3 new PCs or 3 new whatever. Okay, it's not a huge deal, really. It's more of a conceptual hindrance than anything. But
and it's worth it if it's going to let someone have fun when they weren't having fun before. Right, because it's months and months and months of fun.
Yes,
right. That's what you get out of it for one player. That's worth a lot, I think.
Absolutely.
Something else that's worth a lot, I think, that people might not realize is when they like and subscribe to our content and follow.
Yes.
It's worth way more than you think, and we would really appreciate it.
Yes. And as we know,
I still feel so dirty asking.
Every like is just how you want to see me get more stuff wrong. So please, if you want to, reintroduce humility to me, my ego is getting unchecked and needs some hammers in it. Knock it down. Knock it down. But I think you're really, really kind of looking at the full three-dimensionality of a person. Like this person is starting to be a thinking, breathing, living thing because it has problems, right?
Well, they have 3-dimensionality. Like they've got that movement like a real person, right? They're not just sort of this static cutout of a character.
Yes. Yeah. And, like we talked about, it has to keep back, making that net, informing itself, double checking with all of your points, making sure that you're drawing that dot to dot diagram. That's making a picture that's greater than its whole. We also need to really understand that stagnation, right, defeats memorability. So
Right.
our characters that we love from historical stories or whatnot, they have to undergo those story tropes, the hero's journey, the overcoming the bad guy. They have to adapt, modify, and change.
Yep.
Right? They got to Bear Grylls this stuff. Right? Adapt, overcome, or improvise, adapt, overcome. Right? You need to look at what the character is doing, and then find, like we talked about in the water slide, it's gonna swish you around a little bit. So you need to understand how they need to change their intention, perhaps because they find that their intention is insufficient, or isn't as precise, or isn't as efficient as they wanted it to be, right? And so the character needs to adapt and change and show that kind of reflexive or reactionary exposure to its environment.
Right. Yep.
Right. And if it doesn't, then there's no reason to follow that character, because that character is the same at the beginning of the story as it is at the end of the story.
Yeah.
And then it's one note across the whole thing. It's very flat.
Right.
We like change. We like dimensions. We like the, you know, in your basic kind of storyboarding, you like the rise to the climax of the story.
Yep.
Right. If the good guy could always beat the bad guy, right, it's a different waveform shape, right? You know, like since we're referencing things like One Punch Man, we know that generally that's the end of the fight.
Yeah.
Right. And it's a different style of story because of that.
Right.
So is that character memorable? It is, because it's breaking the tropes. Most of the time we don't get to play a character that truly breaks those tropes in such an exceptional way. So when we're doing these changes and doing these things, we need to add that progressive nature of what's happening around them and how you choose to react, right? Just like a lot of RPGs and video games now, your choices inform the ending that you're going to get. Right. Because your character shouldn't be one note, right? Do you kill the bad guy at the end? Do you give them mercy at the end? Yeah. Right. It shouldn't also just fall to that one choice at the very end of the story either. Right? You're building your character and you're changing. Maybe you're adjusting ever so slightly, 1 degree per episode. You're slowly adjusting your character's core goal. Let that be seen.
Would you suggest then, along with setting your goals, motivations, and intentions at the beginning of character creation, also set a sort of a path that you want, like a direction that you want the character to grow in? Like, say they start off with this goal, motivation, or intention. Would you suggest that a player be like, by the end of the campaign, I want them to work towards this specific intention? Like maybe his goal is the same, his motivation is the same, but he's learned, or they've learned that their intention is how they go about doing it is wrong, or there's a better way of doing that. You would think you should set that before you start playing, or just discover it? Do you think is a better way?
I think that there should be an idea of both.
Okay.
Right. In my personal development strategy, I do consider where they come from. Yep. And then that a far more vague goal, right, is not of the characters, but of the player. Right. Right. I would like to see them get to this point. Right. Right. So for the last character that I played, started off, he hated all humans. He thought that they were beneath him. Right. Right. He was an elf. Just to fill in the blanks a little bit. So he was an elf. He thought all humans were below him. Right. For whatever reason, they were below him. Right. As he went through the campaign, he discovered that this isn't true. But it became true in the idea that not all humans, but most humans, right? So he softened a little bit. He didn't lose that core principle. He still felt at the end of the campaign that humans were unable to deal with the like the tier 4 dangers of the world. And so it was up to him to step up and do that. Right. But then it was more of a protectorate. Right. You guys can't. You're unable to deal with this, so I will. Right. And instead of hating them for not being able to do it and thinking that they were beneath him, he understood that, okay, you know, maybe that's not their fault. Maybe humans are just humans. They don't need ire or anything for that. Right. But it's my role now to step up and protect them.
Right.
And I'm not better than them, but I can do this.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so equality kind of happens a little bit. Things flatten out in the hierarchy of his mind.
Right.
But then he still steps forth to be the hero for
Right.
them. So I think that, I didn't change the goal of the character necessarily, but it did soften his intentions. I did soften how he reacted to certain NPCs and certain PCs because we had a human in the party.
Right.
And so that human had a very large, and the way that I as the player made the character interact in a way with that player to go, you know what, you're not that bad. And if you're not that bad, that means that there's enough humans, that there's enough exceptions to the rule that I can't be right when I say all humans.
Right.
Right. And so if I'm wrong when I deal in the absolute, then it's got to be somewhere else.
Right.
And so as an intellectual character, he logically understood that statistically he would be wrong. And so, there's emotional reasons, intellectual reasons, but he softened over time and he changed.
He grew.
He grew
as a person.
Essentially.
Well, that's another, like I said, a way of making your character really matter. Because then through the character growth and experiencing that character growing, then you can grow. Right. And other people who are watching can grow or sort of get that feeling of growth and relate to it. Because no one likes to be stuck as who you are. If you're 40 and you still act like you're 19, you're like, there's a problem with that.
When we see the displacement, right? When we're drawing those pictures between the dots, 40-year-old, 19-year-old mentality, those two don't match.
No.
Right. And so why is this something that you want to change? Oh, my character acts immature, and then over the course of this campaign, they're going to develop maturity, they're going to develop responsibility. Right. That becomes really important.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what I think also creates that emotional bridge for remembering these people, is because in order to change, they have to overcome something, or they have to adapt. They have to make a change in order to overcome a barrier or a struggle or an internal dialogue. Right.
And
their inner demons, whatever.
And overcome themselves, right?
Yes.
Because that's really what it is. You overcome that belief or that aspect of yourself to become something more. Right. I like that idea though, because if you look at the goal, motivation, and intention, if you change just one of them to something else, that new character is completely different. Like completely different, right? With the Goblin Killer, right? Keep the same goal, keep the same motivation, change the intention, and it's totally different. Instead of this one mass murdering, kill all goblins at all costs, right? In order to save the world from goblins. Now, maybe they decide to educate the goblins.
Right.
Make them productive members of society. That's completely different. And their personality would be different. Their hindrances would be different. The role play would be different. The campaign would be very different. I think, right?
Oh yeah. No, when you tag on to your campaign, colonize the goblins, right? You're doing something real different.
Oh geez.
But it's an interesting take then. Yeah. What's
your character concept? He's like, like a fighter colonizer.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah? Does that sound kosher to you?
Yeah.
Goblins. Oh,
goblins. Okay. Just goblins. Maybe, and
dangerous.
Very dangerous. But I like the idea that that the character can go, no, the world would be better without goblins, versus the world would be better with no bad goblins.
Right.
Oh, right now, more like in a moral sense, I no longer have to deal with the weight of sin, in quotations, I'm going to say sin in this case, of killing all the goblins. Now we're, maybe teaching them a better way of life, teaching them a way of cohabitating, right? Making them no longer as nomadic or stealing for their sustenance or whatnot. No, we're just going to teach you to grow sustenance instead. Right. And so that your quality of life can rise.
Right.
Cool, great, awesome. Right. And even if that's what you do, you just say, hey, here's the tools for success. I'm going to help you get to phase 1.
Right.
But then I'm going to back off from your civilization and see where you guys go. Right. Then that character could be forced into the opposite cycle where other people are like, hey man, do you see that herd of cattle that the goblins had? We should go steal it. And your character's like, whoa. Yeah. I just spent all this time.
Yeah.
No, you got to leave them alone. We can't reverse the roles of now humanity picking on them because they're the ones with and we're the ones without.
Right.
I
mean, another thing I want to add, I guess, at this point is that once you've set your your goal, motivation, intention. You set out the hindrances.
Mm-hmm.
You really ought to let your DM know
Oh yes.
what these are, what the character's intentions are and hindrances, because for the
Definitely the
purposes,
motivation.
yeah, for the purposes of sort of that change in the character, because it's kind of unnatural for a character to just change for no reason, right? Typically, you require some sort of outside stimuli, so you'll need sort of buy-in from your DM. You don't need it, but I think it helps a lot if you got buy-in from the DM to push your character in a certain direction,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe put things in place so that your character has to deal with their hindrances.
Yeah. Hey DM, in the next session, I know we're traveling overland or whatever. Can you put in a scene or whatnot that has a sympathetic moment with goblins,
Right.
being the victims of something that my character is going to come across?
You don't even need to go that
You don't
specific
have
even.
to, but you definitely
could.
can say
Yep.
like, hey, I need certain story beats because I've got goals for my character and I've got a transition arc for my character.
Yeah.
And if I don't have these, I don't know where the catalyst is going to come from to create those epiphany moments for the character. So, hey, I know I'm kind of peeking behind the screen, but at some point in the future, can you slide some of this stuff in, or some of the things that we come across that we know is ultimately or stereotypically evil, right? Can we do some role reversal where they become the victims and now we have to save them, and then it starts widening the scope of what my character considers is good, is bad, is worthy of mercy, is worthy of help, right?
And I think if you do this, if you give this to the DM just, I think it's just good news for the DM. It's like, there's things that guarantee reactions from them, right? Like I know what their issues are. I know what they want to do. So if I guarantee I can put this here, and at least one player or one character will have a good reaction, will bite onto this.
Correct.
Right? When it's just, again, a blank slate and you don't know what your players want or what your characters they're in your campaign want or do, like they're just heroes, they want to be adventurers, that's it, right? You're sort of just guessing or putting really sort of superficial sort of events to hopefully get a bite right from the characters. So I like that quite a bit, but I'm moving on a little bit. I think we talk about adding, like, setting your goals and motivation, intentions, hindrances, and that might sound, especially at first, you're like, oh, that's kind of difficult. Like, what do I know what to set? What kind of goal? What's interesting? What's an interesting motivation? Like, how am I going to, how do I know that is what I want to play in a character? Like, what if I get bored of it, right? I think to make setting that character direction easier, you have to set your own personal direction for what you want to do while you play in that campaign. Right? Like, for example, what is me, Sean, as the player, what's my goal for the campaign? Do I want to explore a certain emotion, or do I want to practice leadership? Because something I feel like it's safe to do in D&D. Do I want to practice or see what it's like to face a certain fear of mine? Right. Like, maybe I'm scared of spiders. Like, so maybe I'll make a character who just wants to kill spiders. Right. Spider Slayer. Copyright. Right. Like, what's my intention? Like, do I want to explore a certain idea? Like, is there a goal that you want to achieve for yourself as you play? Right. And then how do you intend on achieving that goal? Right. Same thing. Like, set your personal goal, your personal motivations, personal intentions. And once you know exactly what you want to do, why you want to do it, and how you want to go about doing that, the character that you that would best sort of fit those criteria kind of, for me, come together and just sort of become obvious or more obvious as I go.
Well, if you've
Does that
already,
make sense?
yeah, if you've already established all of like your yeah, like you said, your goals, your motivations,
Yeah.
your intentions, where you want to go, either emotionally, intellectually, or whatnot, as the player, then you've already kind of decided in the Pick Your Own Adventure book. You've already decided certain ways that you'll always react, and so you don't have to consider the entire gambit of reactions to stimulus. Right now, it's okay. When presented with a physical threat, my character responds in this manner, right?
Oh, see, I was more talking about for when you're creating the character.
Right.
So you find your own intentions,
Yes.
and then from there, you know what kind of character to create. The character's goals and motivations and intentions will dictate how they react.
Okay.
But your personal goals, motivations, and intention will dictate what kind of character would fit your goals, your intentions, and your motivation.
Okay. So is this where would you conceive of this? Is this before you start collecting your inspiration, or is this before you start adding goals and motivations?
Somewhere, before goals and motivations, before hindrances, somewhere at the same time as the inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
You can even be like, oh, I really feel like playing a Joker-like character. But then you think about why. Why would I want to play? Like, why is that interesting to me? What is it about Joker that's interesting to me? And what is it about that I want to explore? Like, what do I want to do with that? Right? Or like, once you sort of figure that out, then you can go down the path of your character creation. So sort of with more confidence.
Yeah, more confidence, more clarity,
and more direction
on what type of goals you want to set.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so you would establish goals for the self, before goals for the character.
I think so. If you can, like, you don't have to, of course, but I think it has value, and you won't regret doing that.
Mm-hmm. Well, it'll definitely inform you in what type of game you want to play.
Yeah.
Right.
Definitely.
In how much RP you want to play versus how much combat versus how much exploration, right? These types of games that we talked about in our session 0 episode. Absolutely. These thoughts and feelings are going to inform the questions that kind of limit the scope of the campaign, right? Very drastically.
I would even do this before I pick a class for the character, right? It's like, I want to, well,
unless that class is an inspiration. You saw an awesome build or an awesome idea, and that's one of your inspirational points. And now I'm going to create a personality behind that. But still, that inspiration has to meld with your goals, right? Do you want to create the ultimate juggernaut? Well, yes, but my goal is to be a pacifist. Okay, sure.
Right?
And show me.
And and what's my goal? I want to see what it looks like to have a juggernaut pacifist, right? And or see what happens to a character who's so conflicted like that, who looks like far right, but they're actually far left, right? And then you sort of can then formulate, how am I going to do this? Oh, I'm going to do this by creating a barbarian, but because of their goals, motivations, and intentions, they don't do the typical barbarian thing,
right?
And then everything sort of flows from there. So yeah, absolutely, I put it right at the top.
Interesting. And that really opens up a lot of things to kind of go further than the conceptual when we're talking about character creation, because why character idiosyncrasies.
Idiosyncrasies.
Correct. Take 2. Take that one. When we start looking at these things, character foibles, and I said that one
destroyed.
Correctly. Yeah, maybe. 114. When we start looking at this, if characters have not only, I said we were going to talk about this, but like voice, right? Mannerisms, things that they do that show aspects of their character without betraying the character in sort of an overt way.
Okay.
So for instance, things that we mentioned before, on Firefly, Malcolm and Zoe always cut their apples, right? Because their characters have learned a lesson that bad things could be inside fruit, right? And so now they do this.
Yeah.
One of the iconic facial tics that the Heath Ledger Joker had with the tongue movements was because the makeup around his lips, the prosthetics, kept falling off. And so he would lick them back on in the scene to make sure that they didn't fall off.
Oh, funny. I didn't know that.
So that's where the lip or the tongue thing came up. And that's synonymous with the creepiness.
Yeah.
It added to the character's creepiness, right? With the tongue thing. But that was developed, that was evolved out of a necessity, right? So what does your character do physically? How do they present themselves? That has evolved from their backstory, has evolved from their intentions, their motivations, right? Are they money focused? Okay. Every time you guys get a sack of money, nope, immediately we open up the sack and we count it out.
Yeah.
I don't care if we're in the middle of the thieves' den, if we're in the middle of the dragon's den, if we're whatever, we are counting this out and we are making sure that the amount is correct, right? Yeah. Oh, you're going to pay me in jewels. Well, I brought along an appraiser. Right? He's gonna appraise these jewels right now because I don't want you to get stiffed. I don't want me to get stiffed, right? But there's always this sense of fairness than maybe they're evoking. Yeah. Rather than I don't want to get shortchanged, right? No, I want to make sure that the deal is as we agreed to it, right? I'm a very lawful character type.
Yeah.
And so these kind of physical things, their appearance, right? Does the preacher who stands on the soapbox and calls out to people to try and turn them to their religion, do they hide behind cowl or like a big kind of cowboy hat or sombrero or whatnot? No, right? Like their personas should inform their perspective and their perception. Right? And vice versa.
Big, bombastic, and like charismatic.
Right.
Charismatic.
He could be charismatic.
He's charismatic.
Yeah, he's real nice.
So charismatic.
Real nice. And you know, what does this inform then in the world? In my last campaign, I let you guys, the players, decide what the regional dialects would be like, or what the tones of the accents would be. I was just like, hey, if you create a character from here, I'm allowing you to have the freedom to just do this.
You better do it though.
And it's great when you do it. That was a shot across the bow. So, you know, it's an idea that, you know, there is a matching of the character to the environment that they're in and that they come from, but that should also inform those character decisions. So if they are a pugilist style boxer, right? No, every day I always wrap my hands.
Stop. Is it pugilist or is it a pugilist?
Could be a pugalisp. Pugalisp could be a very, very different kind of character, probably from Featherwood, but or the other one. Anyway, regardless, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments if it's not pronounced that way. But yeah, like a pugilist type, where no, every day I wrap up my hands, just in case. Why? Because I never know when I'm going to throw down, but I know that my chip on the shoulder, barking at authority, whatever kind of attitude follows me no matter where I go. So being ready for a fight is ultimately what I do, but I don't see that I create the fight wherever I go, right? I do pick a fight in the tavern, right?
Yeah.
I think it's the other guy who picked a fight with me,
right?
But I was the instigator, right? So I'm always ready for that. So I always wrap up.
No, I like that idea of sort of the physicality coming out of what you've already set in the previous steps, right? Because it allows you to do what all great writers do, is to show, not tell.
And this is a great way for PCs to do this.
Yes. And it'll give your role playing a internal consistency in all the things they do. And the other players and the DM they might not necessarily understand why a character specifically acts in a certain way or dresses a certain way or speaks in a certain way.
At the beginning. Yes.
But at the beginning, they'll feel that, no, there's something there. It's not just random. There's a reason.
Correct.
Right? Why? And now I'm curious.
Yes.
And now, because I'm curious, your character matters just a little bit more to me. Right? And there's things to discover. There's layers because you've built in those layers already. Right? And now it's just sort of hints, sort of hooks for people to explore. Yeah, I love it.
No, it's super good. And I suppose lastly, one of the things that I think is really important is when you step out of the characters and back into the player's perspective of what's going on, is in session 0, you've already decided what all your goals, motivations, your own goals and motivations for your character are, right? And all of that. look around the table and say, hey, I'm thinking about playing a character that's got a chip on his shoulder and he's looking for a mentorship type player. Does anybody have a mentorship type personality that they could see and then like become friends?
Right.
Or my character is a hopeless romantic, but I would like to try characters having like an in-party romance. Is anybody else open to the idea of having an in-party romance? Right. And finding people that will enable the role play in either maybe enabling the hindrance, right? The character who is a coward.
Yeah.
Right. There's somebody who's always going to step in front of them. Right. And be like, okay, it's okay. You can be a coward. Right. And they have to overcome that. And with that PC's help, then they can, whatever. Or there could be somebody else that's like, no, you can't be a coward. Like, get up there and take the licks, take the beatings. Right. If you don't come back here with a sword stripe on your chest, I'm going to give you one.
Right.
Right. You're going to go get in a fight over there, or you're going to get a fight over here.
No, that's great. Especially because you've got, if you have this stuff set as you go into session 0, you guys as a table can do sort of the next level, it sounds like, of sort of setting up a character. Because sure, your own personal player character is a character, but the party itself, the combination of all the different characters is also its own character.
Correct.
And if you can have sort of dynamics between all the different characters, that makes it even more interesting. So you've got this multiple levels of movement and dynamics and sort of power structures and intentions and goals, which makes for just way more interesting sort of events and role play.
Well, and it's almost impossible to become stagnant.
Yeah.
Right?
Because it's built into the characters.
One cog in the machine that's not moving, you'll start to move. You'll start to emulate what's going on around you, because if you're the fly on the wall type, you're going to see the success and the fun of all the other players.
Right.
You're going to want to join in.
Well, and if your characters are built with the other characters in mind, the other characters will naturally pull you.
Correct.
With their RP.
Correct.
Right. Like, it's hard to be like, I'm fly, like I'm just a wallflower, but the other character's like, what are you doing over there?
Yeah.
Get over here.
Yes.
What are you gonna? All right.
Yeah.
There's already that conflict.
Correct.
There.
Yes.
Right. Then you'll have to deal with it, which is, I don't know, maybe that's what you want to explore as a character.
Absolutely.
Or as a player, sorry.
Yeah. Well, and you're creating more fun. Is it more fun to sit and not be a part of the game? Or is it more fun to sit and be a part of the game?
Right.
Whether you're rolling dice or not, it's always more fun to play.
Well, that's why we're here.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Did we come to play D&D or did we come to play D&D?
Oof, I choose the first one. But I think that's a great way and a great kind of a good understanding of how to expand maybe your creative process and how to start thinking a little bit bigger, obviously, than the page. We always kind of go beyond the page with these conversations because most of the game is off the page.
Funny enough. Yep.
Right. And so I think this is a good point probably for us to end off. But I also really like what we've talked about, right? And
I do, of course. I think there's much more that we could probably talk about when it comes to
we could go deep off the conceptual philosophical end for sure.
Right. And we've talked about fairly high level ideas, but I think if you take these sort of things that we're talking about into account, everything else will come a lot easier. And we'll just sort of roll down the hill, like you've prepped yourself for success. Yeah.
So,
all right.
Yeah.
I think that's it then.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, we're Caffeine and Cantrips.
I'm Sean.
I'm Byron. And we'll see you next time.
Or else.
You're an infection.
Oh, God. Oh, God. 1 hour, 6 minutes.
Nice.